This is the Invite Health Podcast, and I am Amanda Williams. On today's episode, I am going to be talking about sleep, all things sleep. Oftentimes, people take for granted the importance of sleep and why we need to be getting at least 7 hours of sleep every single night. Did you know that 35% of Americans do not get adequate sleep? And when you break this down based off of different races, based off of ages, those numbers are even more alarming. And this is why you have so many folks out there who are more prone to even the development or the exacerbation of certain chronic diseases, things like diabetes, things like heart disease, high blood pressure. So I'm going to talk about all of those things today and give you some tips as to what you can be doing in terms of dietary changes as well as different nutrients that can help to support and maintain good, healthy circadian rhythm so you can get adequate sleep. Now, before we get started, I always like to remind people to subscribe to the Invite Health Podcast, leave us a review. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. All of the information from today's episode on sleep will be available and linked in our episode description at invitehealth.com/podcast. So let's get started and let's talk a little bit about the importance of sleep. They did a real interesting sleep questionnaire. And within this sleep questionnaire, and this was done through the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and one of the areas that they focused in on was self-reported sleep quality and looking at just how poor we do as a nation when it comes to getting adequate sleep. You had people, we're talking in the millions, 50 million Americans saying, yeah, I have a hard time concentrating on things because I'm not getting adequate sleep. You have people who say, I don't seem to be able to remember things that I know I should be able to remember. And I think it's due to not getting adequate sleep. So you look at these different factors and you have to think to yourself, well, why aren't we doing more to address this when we have upwards of 35% of U.S. adults experiencing disrupted sleep? Now, for some, it may be an issue with falling asleep. For others, it's maintaining sleep. For some, it's both. They have a hard time falling asleep, and then when they finally do fall asleep, next thing they know, they're up a couple hours later, and then they have a hard time falling asleep again. When you look at Blacks and Hispanics, those numbers jump even higher. When they did the behavioral risk factor surveillance data pooling on this, and this was done through the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, and they were looking at sleep disorders, and this is through self-reported questionnaires that they had people fill out. Blacks and Hispanics really were the two groups in particular that had a really difficult time when it came to sleep. Upwards of 53% of Blacks reported that they had unintentionally fallen asleep at least once in the past month. That's quite a few people. So when we look at getting adequate sleep, we know that there's many different factors that can play into this. We know that there are reasons as to why sleep quality can be interrupted. And we have to try to figure out, number one, what is the reason why you're experiencing issues with sleep and address those issues. The same shoe doesn't fit every single person when it comes to low sleep quality. So it's trying to figure out what the specific causative reason as to why you're having problems with getting good quality sleep, at least 7 hours. Ideally, it's really supposed to be 8 hours of sleep for optimal health. I mean, you have to have good sleep in order for the body to rest and repair. We have to have adequate sleep. This is essential for learning, for memory, for our overall emotional well-being. When we think about our immune system, we think about cardiovascular health. That's why they've done independent studies looking at poor quality sleep and the risk of cardiovascular disease. So these are all things that we need to be aware of. And because it affects so many people, on a public health standpoint, we need to be able to hone in on the areas that we know are modifiable and can bring about so much change. So I'm going to talk about all of these different things. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I'm going to tell you about some interesting research studies that have involved cardiovascular health and directly correlating that with poor sleep quality. We'll be right back.
This podcast is brought to you by InviteHealth.com. For over 20 years, Invite Health has provided premium quality supplements and expert advice you can trust. Now, first-time customers can enjoy an exclusive offer. Visit InviteHealth.com/podcast or click the link in this episode description. That's InviteHealth.com/podcast for your exclusive offer on Invite Health products. Invite Health offers the resources you need to make important decisions about your health. Chat live with degreed healthcare professionals, get product information, and find retail locations near you at InviteHealth.com. You can also learn about our new genetic testing program and our exclusive Invite Fitness Wellness program. Follow Invite Health on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast today. Now back to our episode.
And welcome back. Now let's talk about some of the long-term risk of getting insufficient sleep. We know that this is linked to a variety of different health conditions, chronic disease states, things such as heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, depression, anxiety. So if you're not feeling like you are rested, you wake up in the morning and you still feel tired, this can lead to issues with problems staying focused, paying attention while you're at work or while you're at school. This can leave you to be more irritable, which doesn't make you really that pleasant to be around. We know that this can then lead to further issues with anxiety and low mood. And obviously, we all know the true risk of not getting good sleep, and say you're out and you're driving around and you doze off at the wheel. The increased risk of accidents. So the alarmingly high rate of insufficient sleep in this country is something that we have to look at and address on a multifactorial mode. So you have to look at the diet. And we know that only 12% of Americans are considered to be metabolically healthy. And this is from the study that they did out of University of North Carolina. So we know most Americans are not doing the right things when it comes to quality of food. And foods do matter. When we look at issues with chronic diseases in this country and how that can impact, you have to look at medications that people are prescribed for certain chronic conditions that can disrupt sleep quality. We have to look at hormonal contributors. Is there adrenal stress going on? Is there thyroid dysfunction? Where are your sex hormones at? There's a strong correlation between disrupted sleep and low testosterone in men and women. So trying to decipher all of these different things, first and foremost, we need to figure out what's going on. Is it a problem with trying to fall asleep, or is it a problem trying to stay asleep? Because when it comes to different nutrients that you may be lacking in your diet and knowing what to supplement with, that can make a big difference. Trying to make sure you're getting adequate magnesium, making sure that you're getting adequate zinc. So all of these different factors that we know play a role. But let's talk a little bit about the correlation between really significant chronic disease states and the role that sleep plays into the development or the exacerbation of those. So the Journal of the American College of Cardiology came out with their findings of the association of sleep duration with the quality of subclinical atherosclerosis and looking at if there was this correlation. So they took a group of men and they were assessing their overall sleep duration. Were they sleeping, 7 hours? Were they sleeping 6 hours? Were they sleeping less than 6 hours? And then looking at their coronary calcification, so looking at the coronary artery. And after adjusting for other risk factors, they were able to determine that lower sleep time throughout the night was independently associated with an increased risk of atherosclerosis. And they said this actually highlights the importance of healthy sleep habits for the prevention of cardiovascular disease. We know that they did a really large study where they were looking at insomnia and the risk of heart failure. And this was published in the European Heart Journal back in 2014, where they were looking at the baseline data on insomnia, problems with falling asleep, maintaining sleep, looking at different cardiovascular risk factors. And in this study, this was really kind of neat because they were assessing people over an 11-year time span and looking for any correlation between their sleep disturbances and their cardiovascular risk. And they said insomnia is indeed associated with an increased risk of heart failure. So if we know all of these different things, why are we not doing more? I mean, when it comes down to diagnosing insomnia, obviously, doctors can perform a series of different tests to rule out underlying things that may be causative to this. Is there a thyroid issue going on? Having someone go and do a sleep study to see if there's episodes where you have sleep apnea, where you actually stop breathing during the night. Looking at the actual risk factors for why people have disrupted sleep, such as increase in age. We know that this is certainly a risk factor for disrupted sleep. We know that when it comes to hormones and gender, women have a greater likelihood to struggle with insomnia than men due to hormonal fluctuations. This can occur, even in younger women because of menstruation, because of pregnancy. And obviously we know during menopause, women really start to feel that impact of those hormonal fluctuations. You have to look at all of the different factors that can play a role. You have to look at what medications you might be on that are correlated with issues with disrupted sleep. Do you have more of a issue with things like caffeine? And maybe you have too much caffeine throughout your day. There's different factors, and there's always an answer. The problem is that many times we don't seek the actual answer. So I'm going to give you some tips when it comes to lifestyle modifications and trying to incorporate healthy sleep habits that can be beneficial for optimizing your sleep. But we're going to take a quick break, so when we get back from that, I'll give you those tips. We'll be right back.
This podcast is brought to you by InviteHealth.com. For over 20 years, Invite Health has provided premium quality supplements and expert advice you can trust. Now, first-time customers can enjoy an exclusive offer. Visit invitehealth.com/podcast or click the link in this episode description. That's invitehealth.com/podcast for your exclusive offer on Invite Health products. Invite Health offers the resources you need to make important decisions about your health. Chat live with degreed healthcare professionals, get product information, and find retail locations near you at invitehealth.com. You can also learn about our new genetic testing program and our exclusive Invite Fitness Wellness program. Follow Invite Health on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast today. Now back to our episode.
And welcome back. Let's talk a little bit about sleep hygiene. This is probably one of the most effective ways to go about dealing with issues with insomnia or poor sleep quality. But these are the areas that most people just don't even look at. It's like, I can't sleep. I'm going to go talk to my doctor. Maybe they can give me this hypnotic and it's going to, hopefully make me sleep. That's usually not the best way. We want to try and change things that we're doing to ourselves. Now, shift work, that's another story. If someone is working the midnight shift, not much you can do about that. Obviously, there's things you can do dietary-wise during the day to make sure that your brain is getting nourished with the correct and proper nutrients. Those are things that you obviously want to focus in on, making sure that you're taking omega-3 fatty acids, making sure that you're taking vitamin D3, making sure that you're following and adhering to a Mediterranean diet so you're getting powerful antioxidants just from your foods alone. These are things that obviously you want to focus in on, anybody, but especially those who are doing shift work. So when we think about sleep hygiene, we have to think about what are things that we can control to try to improve upon our sleep. And remember, these things don't happen overnight. Oftentimes people say, I tried that, it doesn't work. Well, you have to put a little time and effort into these. I mean, you're laying there not able to sleep anyways. It's not that hard to try a couple of these techniques. So for many people, the issues that they'll have is having light. And maybe you have your television running and people say, but I like to fall asleep to the sound of the TV. But you're not getting good quality sleep when you're doing that. So keeping your bedroom cool and dark and quiet, this is key. Keeping your sleep and wake times consistent throughout the week. This is really key because a lot of times, Monday through Friday, people are working and they have their routine. They're getting up and going to bed usually around the same time, but on the weekends, they throw everything out of sorts. Then you have to try and reset again. So trying to stay consistent 7 days a week with the time that you get up and the time that you go to bed can make a big difference. Trying to limit daytime sleeping. This is also something that's important. Oftentimes people will fall asleep and, take an hour or two nap during the day. So those are the things that you want to avoid. You want to make sure that you're physically active. You don't want to be going out and doing heavy physical activity 2 hours before you go to sleep, but every day you should be doing some type of physical activity. You want to be able to decompress. So different means for relaxation. For many people who have the problem with sleep onset, so being able to fall asleep, part of the problem is your mind is racing and you can't shut that off. In those types of situations, things such as 5-HTP, which is 5-hydroxytryptophan, can be very beneficial because it helps the body with the natural pathway for the production of serotonin and melatonin. So for many people, they'll find that if they use 5-HTP prior to sleep, it allows the brain to be in a much calmer realm. Same thing when we look at L-theanine. L-theanine is a really wonderful amino acid that is primarily found in green tea. And this also can help the body enhance GABA. And GABA is our calming neurotransmitter. So there's different things that we know can certainly help when it comes to sleep hygiene. If you are more prone to being affected by different stimulants like caffeine, then you want to try to avoid having those in the evening. You want to be able to get outside. Be part of the outdoors. Some people are, in an office building, they don't see the light of day, but you want to be able to have some form of natural light each day. This is important because when we think about how the brain is working and we think about the pineal gland, that light is incredibly important for that circadian rhythm. So being able to reset that circadian rhythm, these types of sleep hygiene patterns can help to achieve that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about making sure that you're achieving good quality sleep. And the food certainly matters. So I encourage people to adhere to a Mediterranean diet. This helps to keep everything more in check. But then when it comes to nutrients that you can be incorporating in, we can look clearly at melatonin. We know that melatonin is the primary hormone involved in controlling the body's sleep-wake cycle. And supplemental melatonin can support the body's natural melatonin cycle. So this is one of those areas, once again, where people say, well, I tried melatonin, didn't work for me. Well, maybe you weren't using enough, or maybe you used too much. Everyone's going to be different when it comes to the demand. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. I'm going to tell you about a couple of studies that have come out recently on melatonin that I think you may find interesting, but we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I'll tell you about how melatonin helps to promote sleep, but also another added benefit that sometimes people don't even know about melatonin. It's real interesting. Stick around. We'll be right back.
This podcast is brought to you by InviteHealth.com. For over 20 years, Invite Health has provided premium quality supplements and expert advice you can trust. Now, first-time customers can enjoy an exclusive offer. Visit InviteHealth.com/podcast or click the link in this episode description. That's InviteHealth.com/podcast for your exclusive offer on Invite Health products. Invite Health offers the resources you need to make important decisions about your health. Chat live with degreed healthcare professionals, get product information, and find retail locations near you at invitehealth.com. You can also learn about our new genetic testing program and our exclusive Invite Fitness Wellness program. Follow Invite Health on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast today. Now back to our episode.
And welcome back. So I was talking about melatonin. Remember, melatonin is your hormone that's involved in controlling the body's sleep-wake cycle. So taking supplemental melatonin for many people is really quite beneficial. Now it comes down to how much do you need. For some people, it may be 3 milligrams. For others, that's too much. For some, that's not enough. And generally speaking, I mean, if you take too much melatonin, you're going to know because in the morning you'll feel a little bit groggy and it takes you a little bit longer to come to. But when you think about the different drugs that are out there, the pharmacological agents that are geared towards insomnia, the way that those medications are working is via that melatonin receptor pathway. And so these drugs that are out there are targeted towards that. But the problem is sometimes they overcompensate, and then hence we end up with these issues. So that's why going with things from nature, things that are naturally already in the body, such as melatonin, for many people do much better. And when it comes to how melatonin is promoting sleep, we have to look no further than looking specifically at those melatonin receptors. So here's a study that came out of the University of Missouri, Columbia, because that's their main campus. So Mizzou, Columbia. This is 2018. And what the researchers there through the Department of Neurology were looking at was how we don't recognize how important sleep is. And it's estimated that 50 to 70 million Americans have some type of sleep disorder. That's according to the National Sleep Foundation. And they said melatonin seems to be an answer for many of these people. They turn to melatonin supplements to help them fall asleep. They said, we know melatonin is this hormone known to promote sleep, but how exactly is it working? So the researchers at University of Missouri discovered how melatonin actually suppresses different neurons in the brain that keep you awake and alert, which is why it helps you with sleep. So it's looking basically at the MT1 receptor, and I'm not going to get too heavy into the weeds on that, but really kind of interesting. There's a reason why people do well when they take melatonin. It just really comes down to getting the right amount. I always say starting low is the best way to go, and you can always adjust it from there. Now, I had also mentioned 5-HTP, which is 5-hydroxytryptophan. When we look at that pathway and you have tryptophan as the main amino acid, and then that, we convert over to 5-HTP, and then we have serotonin, and then serotonin leads us over to melatonin. So for people who have that racing thoughts at night, like, what do I have to do tomorrow? Or what didn't I get done today? And they're laying there in bed, but they can't seem to fall asleep. 5-HTP is oftentimes a very good option. For those who have a hard time with maintaining sleep, often that combination of melatonin, even with magnesium, can be a really nice 1-2 combo there. But here's just a bit of fun research on melatonin. I always like to give people insight on different nutrients, or in this case, hormones, that are working in the body that yield you other benefits beyond what we know it to do. So, University of Granada, they were looking at how melatonin helps to control weight gain as it stimulates the appearance of beige fat that can burn calories instead of storing them. So, really kind of interesting. So these researchers, these Spanish scientists, have discovered how melatonin helps to control weight gain because it's stimulating that appearance of beige fat. So you have brown fat and you have white fat. When you're a baby, you have primarily brown fat. That's why babies always have, those little baby fat rolls. But then by the time they're a toddler, that goes away because they're converting those fat cells. They're converting from brown over into the white fat cells. Now, white fat cells don't have that same thermodynamic property to it. They don't burn as easily as the brown fat. But what they're finding is that melatonin actually does a really fine job of making that white fat act more like brown fat. Hence, they're calling it beige fat. And they published this in the Journal of Pineal Research. Remember the pineal gland in the brain responsible for that circadian rhythm and for that release of melatonin. And they said here that these researchers at University of Granada, in conjunction with University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, revealed for the first time this really unique enigma as to why melatonin has this metabolic benefit in terms of diabetes as well as high cholesterol. So you think about that just for a moment. You think, okay, well, I have a problem with sleeping along with the other 35% of the U.S. adults in this country. And we know that if we're getting better quality of sleep, we'll have better overall metabolic rate, but we also can help to regulate things like blood glucose better and have less insulin resistance. So a lot of really cool research out there showing just how critical it is when it comes to maintaining proper hormone status, and melatonin just happens to be one of those. So I'd like to share that with you. Now, we can also look at other things such as magnesium. So key minerals like magnesium and zinc, they have such a significant role in different biological functions in the body, including for sleep. So when we think about magnesium, one of the things that we know about it is it does help in terms of that regulation of circadian rhythm, but we also know it can help with skeletal muscle relaxation. So if we're going to bed and we're all tensed up because we're thinking about what we didn't accomplish for the day or what we need to accomplish for tomorrow, we have all these different racing thoughts, then maybe we should be considering taking a little magnesium to allow those muscles and everything to be in a more relaxed state. For many people, they'll find that taking a tablet of magnesium glycinate in the evening before bed really can help promote that nice calming effect. And then we look at zinc. We know that zinc is this trace element that's essential for so many, once again, biological functions, including neurocognition. So when we think about our brain, we obviously want to remember that the brain is reliant on so many different factors: hormones, neurotransmitter, antioxidants, and minerals, as well as vitamins. So when it comes to zinc, we know that zinc can play a role in facilitating sleep. And low serum levels of zinc have been correlated with poor sleep quality. So by stabilizing your zinc status and stabilizing your magnesium status, that in and of itself can help. Now, why does this matter? Well, if we just look at the basic stats of, let's just say, that we know this is a low end, but 50% of adults in America are magnesium deficient, and roughly about that same amount are deficient in zinc. And then we look at the numbers for people who have sleep disturbances. At least 35% of people have sleep problems. So how many of those people who have sleep problems have those sleep problems because of low magnesium and low zinc? And this can be a very simple solution. So about 30 milligrams of zinc per day, even if you're getting, maybe another 15 milligrams coming from your multivitamin. Say you're taking about 50 milligrams of zinc a day, perfect. And then magnesium, that's always going to be based on your bowel tolerance to that. But, say you use the magnesium glycinate, 200 milligrams, maybe twice a day, or at least 200 milligrams in the evening before bed. So these are ways for you to make simple changes that can make such an impact on your sleep quality. So we're going to take one last break. When we get back, I'm going to kind of wrap everything up for you. We'll be right back.
This podcast is brought to you by InviteHealth.com. For over 20 years, Invite Health has provided premium quality supplements and expert advice you can trust. Now, first-time customers can enjoy an exclusive offer. Visit invitehealth.com/podcast or click the link in this episode description. That's invitehealth.com/podcast for your exclusive offer on Invite Health products. Invite Health offers the resources you need to make important decisions about your health. Chat live with degreed healthcare professionals, get product information, and find retail locations near you at invitehealth.com. You can also learn about our new genetic testing program and our exclusive Invite Fitness Wellness program. Follow Invite Health on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast today. Now back to our episode.
And welcome back. So just to kind of wrap things up for you, when it comes to sleep, there's many different things that can be responsible for your sleep disturbances. So you always want to try and get to the root cause. Is it sleep apnea? Go in and have a sleep study done. Is there a hormonal reason as to why this is occurring? Look at your sex hormone. Look at your adrenal hormones. Look at things like insulin resistance. So looking at your likelihood for something like metabolic syndrome, or maybe you're a diabetic. Look and see what medications you're on. And then look to see if we're missing things in our diet. If you're following a standard American diet, the likelihood that we have more of a neurotoxic type of an environment is much greater. So these are the things that you want to be able to do. You want to be able to adhere to a Mediterranean diet. You want to follow proper sleep hygiene to enhance your sleep quality. We want to make sure that we're covering gaps in terms of mineral balance in the body with magnesium and zinc. We want to make sure that we're addressing these issues. We want to see, is there a problem that we don't have adequate melatonin? These are all things that we want to think about. You can look at studies where they've looked at the amino acid from green tea known as L-theanine, and how L-theanine has this protective effect when it comes to the neurons in your brain. There was a journal study back in 2008, the Neurotoxicology Journal, where they were looking at different environmental neurotoxins and oxidative stress and how this can damage the nervous system. And, you think about your brain, you think about sleep quality, and we have to look and say, is this an area that we have to address? So in this particular study, what they found was that when they gave L-theanine prevented this damage that was occurring within the brain cells. The American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine that same year in 2008 published their discovery. Researchers out of University of Louisville found that the antioxidant properties within green tea could help to prevent cognitive deficits associated with sleep apnea. So we know that there's things that are in nature that can be very beneficial when it comes to enhancing our overall sleep quality. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to feed the brain the nutrients that it needs so it can get a restful night's sleep. And then we want to minimize things that we know can have disruptive patterns in the brain. We want to practice good sleep hygiene and adhere to that Mediterranean diet. Because at the end of the day, we care about our sleep, and we don't want to be marching down the path of chronic disease. We don't want to be more prone to the development of atherosclerosis and other cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, exacerbating arthritis because we're in this constant chronic inflammatory state, which is worsened every single day by inadequate sleep. So first finding out what some of those risk factors are for you, and then making those adjustments to optimize your overall sleep and optimize your overall wellness. So that's it for me for today. Just as a reminder, I wanted to, thank you for tuning in. But remember that you can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Make sure you subscribe, leave us a review, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. And we will see you next time for another episode of Invite Health Podcast.